right. That I'm focused on with the incredible team that I'm lucky to have, is a couple of things, right? The inequality and the poverty levels that we have in the district, they most strongly manifest as a housing challenge, right? I share with folks that there isn't really a day that I am able to go into the office that someone isn't there to say, "Hey, Pierina, can you get me?" Because they think I'm like their daughter, right? It's a lot of older folks will go to the office and they're like, "Pierina, I need an apartment," or "Can you get my landlord to fix this?" or "Can you do that?" or "I'm behind on rent. I need some assistance," and so that kind of looms large. And being the chair of the city council's committee on housing and buildings, is really it's such an honor, because I get to be at the forefront of fighting for exactly what my community needs the most, right? Which is that stability. So we're fighting for vouchers. We're fighting to bring, this is a little known fact, but right now, of course, everyone, big known fact, everybody knows that in a few days the budget in Albany is due, and one of the things that we're pushing for is a revamped J51 credit, which is available for landlords who want to upgrade their properties, want to make improvements. It expired last year at the same time as 421A, but didn't get as it's like the step cousin, didn't get the attention that 421A got. But we're actually hoping to see out of Albany an improved J51 credit that has an expanded set of expenditures that are allowable, and green expenditures are also allowable, so that some buildings that might struggle more have access to some resource to help them to comply with things like local law 97. Maintaining what we have, right? For as many doñas, little old ladies that might come to the office, and families that might come to the office asking for an apartment, like we can't build our way out of this problem. We have to make sure that we don't have a leaky bucket, right? That we are maintaining the units that we have. And so that's a really big focus, is vouchers and housing quality assistance, J51 upgrades, but also holding landlords to account, like the ones who are not doing the right thing for their tenants, and are not maintaining housing quality, making sure that we're working with the agency. HPD has a staffing issue, as has been well documented, making sure we're working with the agency to get them the hires that they need, so that they can do the work to protect the tenants in the units. So of course, as the chair of housing and buildings, that's big area number one. Want to see more built and preserved and everything else. And then my exciting project. It's where I call it like the honeymoon phase of this project, or the third. It's the third wedding, but it's the honeymoon phase of the third wedding. Oh, but the Kingsbridge Arbory, right? The
Third
King
time's a charm. I know it is.
charm,
And you're engaged in it, so I know it's going to make it across the finish line. I know it is.
I really hope so. I really hope so. We're giving it our all. So the third go around, the structure has been functionally vacant for the past 30 years. It's had transient uses here and there, but the largest armory in the world, which calls the Kingsbridge neighborhood home, it really has so much potential to produce jobs and opportunities for our youth. You can fit 3 football stadiums inside of the drill hall. That's not even the whole thing. That's just the drill hall. And then there's a 2-story structure adjacent to the drill hall, where the community is talking about community facilities, space for events and things like that. And then you have anywhere between 2 and 7 stories below ground. EDC and the engineers are taking a look at it, but there's like some weird subdivisions. There's a lot of space in the armory, is really the point. And I think different in this go around than in previous go arounds, the community is really talking about having a mix of uses in the space, not just having a giant, development team come in and do a national blah, right? The previous iteration was a national ice center, but really thinking about how can we use use the different parts of the armory, you know, to meet the different needs that the community is saying they want. So we're in the honeymoon phase. I say that because, you know, there's going to be when we're visioning now and we're talking about what the community wants to see. But when we start to get these proposals back and really, you know, rubber meets the road about what we're going to do here, that's going to become a much more contentious process and very difficult one. And I'm going to count on all of the support that I can, you know, to just make sure that I'm driving the hardest bargain that I can for my neighborhood and for the Bronx as a whole.
Absolutely. That is such a transformational project. And I know it is a labor of love. And I love that you affectionately call it the honeymoon period, because these, for the folks who are joining us, these are difficult projects. And they're costly projects. And you know, it's not like you have the never-ending checkbook. And you know, financing it is difficult. And I think you can count on the Bronx Chamber of Commerce and all of our colleagues and members as being supporters and trying to figure out how we can conceptualize getting that done. And, you know, I know from my personal experience with you that if there's anybody who has the energy and the tenacity and also like just the strong will to like stand up to people to get things done, it is you. So count us as partners on that. And, you know, can you speak just a little bit to, you know, what you're feeling, what you're hearing from the community in terms of like Kingsbridge uses? Like I know that some folks have said, you know, oh, you know, maybe it should be a movie studio, but then there are some other more creative, smaller use that folks are looking for. You know, I don't know if we have any mall developers on the line, but I think we're pretty adamant that a mall is not the best use for the space. But you know, trying to figure things out. What are you hearing on the ground from the community?
Yeah. Well, you know, if it's words in the English language, we're hearing it. It's really, we've gotten all kinds of proposals and ideas. But you know, I think what's important is the theme, right? That there's these twin themes that just come out in every single conversation. And if you know me, you know that I love being on the ground. I love talking to folks, and just making sure that I am maintaining a, you know, a connection to the heartbeat and the pulse of the district. And so over Thanksgiving, we had a giant, you know, food distribution festival celebration, community celebration over at St. James. I mean, we must have had like 3,000 individuals picking up a food. And so that represents 3,000 families, right? And so just going through that, I literally was there from the very first person to the very last person, and I spoke to every single person. And in that space, similar to the public workshops we've had, similar to every time we've done engagement, two things, right? Number one is a use that is producing not just jobs, right? Not just anything, but good paying jobs, right? Good paying, and dare I say union jobs, right? The labor movement and, you know, strong labor organizations have been a part of this process. And even when they're in the space, when they're not in the space, folks are asking for the same thing. We don't just want anything. We want good paying union jobs. And I think that's a really critical piece, because the first go around, right? The first marriage, the first marriage failed because in back in 2009, they wouldn't agree to a living wage, which now is like, it's crazy to think about. It was like $12 at that point. And they wouldn't agree to it. And then of course, Fight for 15 was successful. And now everybody has to do that. But, you know, so that's one, right? And then two is youth. Youth. Actually, I should have started with that. Youth. The kids. We need to look out for the kids. And it's incredible how everywhere I go, that's really it. So I think, you know, that bifurcation of there's something in the drill hall that is producing jobs, and, you know, it can be subdivided to be up to 860,000 square feet just in the drill hall. So
That is a lot of space. That's a lot of closet.
I could put so many dresses in the number. it's a lot of space. It's a lot of space. And so, something that's dedicated to that job production function in there, and then the facility, the community facilities for the young people especially, but for the community at large on the other side. But I would add something further, right? I've been, we have a working group, and the working group is, all local, our community boards, our elected officials, our merchant, our local chambers, merchants association. So the Kingsbridge Merchant Association is on there, Burnside is on there, and so these folks, and so importantly, my co-chair is the Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition, who's been fighting for the redevelopment for so long. And so part of what is coming especially strongly from the Clergy Coalition, but we hear, echoes of in the community, is community ownership, right? How can the community land trust model feature in the Kingsbridge Armory? Can the community own the space? And so when I talk about the difficult conversations, right? I'm a fan of just bringing the elephant in the room. That's a difficult conversation. That's a difficult proposition, because we're talking about a space that is going to cost upwards of $1 billion, maybe $2 billion at this point to just get into working condition, right? There's no HVAC system, and it's a beautiful structure. There's no HVAC system in there. There's all kinds of remediation, that is needed. It's a really old structure built in 1917.
And
So
it's
that
also a historic landmark too. So the things you have to do like that automatically throws like an extra 30% on any rehab.
Yep, yep, right. And I don't, at this point, our community does not have financial promise or commitments from the mayor, from the governor, or from Washington, D.C. We're trying to get that. Please, chamber stakeholders, help us in securing grant funds, not just loan funds. We have $100 million loan fund that Senator Gustavo Rivera was able to secure in the last go around, and it's still earmarked for the Armory. But the reality is that at this point, that is all we have, right? That is all we have. And so we know that the last go, right? We talked about the first marriage failed because of living wage. The second marriage failed because the developer was never able to get the financing together, right? They said I talk about it, right? We were sold a dream in District 14 and in Kingsbridge, and we were told, yeah, we're gonna have this National Ice Center. There's gonna be all this community facility, all of these promises, and it was great. And those will sort of serve as a North Star and as a baseline for this process. But the development team never had the financing. They went around to different banks, and banks just didn't lend, right? So this is a financially risky endeavor, and that is just the reality of it. And so the more that that government can put in grants, and that we can soften that landing for whatever winning development team there is, then the more the better chance at success that we have. So it's going to be a tough one. And if we can swing community ownership, absolutely, let's try. But I just, we have to go in as a public, as a local leader, and local leaders with all of my elected counterparts and community-based organizations. We have to go in eyes wide open, understanding how difficult this is, how much the community wants it, and how we have to, figure out how to be flexible and creative in making something successful happen here.
If I had the $2 billion, you'd be the first person to get it.
I appreciate that. Can you work on getting $2 billion?
Yeah, I'm gonna double down on my work efforts just to get that. I promise you. I'm on it. I'm on it. So
Yeah.
you had mentioned a lot of the merchants associations, and I know you've got some business improvement districts around your area and things of that sort. And obviously the chamber is a partner. How can we be helpful? What can we do? I mean, Kingsbridge Armory is one of the signature projects, but how can we be helpful day to day in helping your office? It was really interesting. We had the emerging professionals mixer a couple weeks ago at Focus Lounge on Fordham Road. And, it was just so amazing to see so many young people turn out and want to be engaged. And I think that there's an interesting cross-sectionality here that, business, youth, leadership programs can come together, but how can we be actively helpful in your success?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Michael. Um, Appreciate the investment in my success, right? And right, the success of the district. I have a huge aspiration for the district and for the broader Bronx, and that is to turn our community from one that is has relatively low levels of community activism and engagement, low voter turnout, low participation in our community boards, our civic instruments. I want to transform that from a community that feels like government is not for them, and government is not here to serve them, only here to, give them a parking ticket and whatever else, right? Into a community that is in control, right? Has the reins, right? We have full community boards, everybody's participating. We've formed bids in our major thoroughfares. We have folks participating and coming out to everything, right? And so to get from that point A to point B, there's a lot of work and partnership that is necessary. And I talk about, the Kingsbridge Armory process. I didn't necessarily need to, embark on a process like we did with the community engagement piece and the forums and everything like that. Same as with the budgeting process, we do participatory budgeting. We don't need to do that, but these are all means to the end of getting folks more engaged. And I think, to that point, the Bronx Chamber has an incredible network in the city of New York and just in the Bronx, right? And to have your support in getting to that point B, last 2 weeks ago with the chamber event at Focus being a beautiful example, I think that's really at the heart of it, is how do we work together, capitalize on your convening power and the power of government to bring people together and really have them feel like there are supports for them, right? And that's one of the big things that came out of that event for me. I greeted every person that I could, and they were like, what does the chamber do? Can they help me with my small business? And I'm an entrepreneur, and I don't know who to call. It's like, absolutely, the chamber is here, and you should connect to that. And so, just more of that. And then also, making sure that I already asked you to help with the armory, and y'all who have connections with the mayor and everyone else,
I've got the carpal tunnel hand right here, ready to write the check. You got it.
write the check and
and make phone calls.
yeah,
And we also
yeah,
just joining together to be the biggest advocates that we can, right? This is a signature process, project that will have rippling effects, not just on the Bronx, but the region.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I would add the third piece of, how I envision, and there's probably more, so please tell me. But we have one business improvement district in our area, which is the Fordham bid. Super happy to have them. But we have many commercial corridors that could benefit from that. So we have the Burnside Jerome Tremont Merchant Association, which has been wanting to become a bid for many years. We have the Kingsbridge Road Merchant Association. And then we have smaller strips like on 176th Street. And so, one challenge that I've had is just reaching the property owners. No problem reaching the business owners, but the property owners are tough. So to the extent that you all might have those relationships, or the network might have their relationships, we're really trying to. I'm trying to leave the district and the Bronx a little bit different, at least than I found it. And that's really an important piece of it, is making sure that the folks who own the properties and the folks who are, occupying them are in conversation, and we're building a better Bronx together.
I think that's great. And just, off the top of my head, identifying property owners. I know, because I come from the bid world, and we've done multiple expansions, and we've managed other bids when the city has asked us to. Identifying the property owners and building that relationship is probably one of the most important, but also one of the hardest things. And from the policy perspective, I don't know the entire purview of housing and buildings, but it's extraordinarily helpful if we could get rid of the hidden LLC names to actually understand who those property owners are. And it's not because we want to be predatory or bash them in public, but just like for things like this, because when we speak to property owners, they say, yeah, we'd love to have a bid. We'd love to have those supplemental services. but finding them is really difficult. And then also like sifting through, and I can speak from my experience on Third Avenue. You know, we've had property owners that they're based in Tel Aviv, or they're in Nevada, or in Florida. And tracking them down to, one, explain what a business improvement district is, because not all states and countries have them. But then also to really further understand like the value add, and like, does it increase property values? Sure it does.
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
also delivers on some baseline services, advocacy, and organizing that I think really empower our businesses and communities. And I know I personally love to you know, unpack that a little bit more, because it would make bid formation easier. I know Burnside has been trying forever to get that going, and it comes down to getting the property owners to sign on to the statements of support. And if you don't know who they are, it's difficult to get that information in their hands. So we're happy to help with that, however we can. And we have Derry Saldana on the line. Derry is our director of business development and the SBRN program, Small Business Resource Network. And, you know, this has come up time and time again. And we're actually going to, I think on April 24th, we're doing a community cleanup day on Jerome. So we're excited, you know, graffiti removal and all that good stuff. We are here to be partners with you however we possibly can be. So if you're comfortable with it, I'd love to open it up for some questions in the chat box through a moderated chat. There are some that are coming up, which I think may be too soon, but I appreciate the hustle. Yes. So there's a question: how can we provide cleaning services for the Kingsbridge Armory? I don't think we're there yet, but I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, council member. I don't know if Kingsbridge is even allowing people to actually enter, because I think they're doing an asbestos cleanup now, right?
Yeah, so yes, and the asbestos removal work is completed. We're offering tours of the armory for folks that want to go. You can sign up at kingsbridgetogether.com. So please do that and check it out so you can see how majestic it is in there. But no, we're not in the stage of having cleaning services yet. There is EDC, the city agency EDC manages the property. They have like 1 to 2 people who manage the whole thing, and they're the only ones with keys, right? We go in for the tours and then we leave. But until it's redeveloped, we don't have that need yet.
Excellent. Question coming in from social. Sorry, the sun is blinding me. I've got a beautiful window in front of me, but it's just like it's wetting in here. There's a question on, you know, how does 421A in Albany impact housing stock in New York City, and the conversations that are happening up there with an extension or a revamp of that incentive. I don't know if you can speak publicly on that or what, but if you have any insight, happy to hear.
Yeah, I'd love when folks ask me about state issues, because I can say whatever I want and there's kind of like no consequences. Okay, I'm just kidding. Right, because I'm a city council member, so I work with the mayor. But
wait a minute, Governor Hochul's calling right now. She wants to talk to you now. Just kidding.
Just kidding. No, but in all seriousness, I don't have direct purview over 421A. That is completely in the hands of the state legislature. I'm a city legislator, so the state legislature and the governor. But that said, in terms of its importance and what is happening, right? So the importance is large, right? It's 421A has played an integral role in development of pretty much, well, not all housing, but a lot of housing in the city of New York since the 70s, right? We have spent billions and billions of dollars, on the program, subsidizing and incentivizing and subsidizing housing creation all across the boroughs, and just this is my perspective, and what I have shared in the past is the 421A program was created in the 70s. It was created in a very, very different time for New York City, where abandonment was the problem, and blighted blocks and blighted communities was the problem. And the government was, the city government was working with the state. We just wanted anything and everything. Like, please build. Please don't leave. We will abate your taxes. We will give you these tax incentives. Please don't leave, right? And it was successful. 421A was successful, and other programs that were created for the purpose of stabilizing the city were very successful. And in 2021, when it expired, and even prior to the pandemic, we started to get to a point that the original intention of the program, which was please build anything, was not quite what the city needs at this point. What the city needs more of is targeted, development, right? So how do we get at affordability levels that are targeted? How do we make sure that we're reaching those that need the housing the most, right? And so this this is the way that I talk about it. And then, of course, there's other elected counterparts that I have that say we can't really be talking about 421A. We need comprehensive tax reform for the city of New York, because our property taxation doesn't really make sense. And then on top of that, just another layer of folks who are just like, abolish 421A. We don't need that at all. Like we're just giving money away to wealthy developers, right? Like are all different sides of the spectrum that resulted in 421A ending with no replacement program, no renewal plans last year, right? So, where are we now? So we're at a point, and we're going to start to see it. We're going to start to see that a lot of proposed developments that would have built and resulted in, housing across the city that's going to slow down. It is. And, from my perspective, it's important to bring something back, right? It's important to bring something back, but that something has to be intentional. That something has to be, in line with the goals that we have as a city, in line with meeting the challenges that we have as a city. What I am is the chair of housing and buildings in the city council. And there we have the recent housing vacancy survey, which is conducted by the census. They go door to door all across the city, and they assess, how many units do we have in the city of New York, how many are vacant, how many are in rough shape, how many, all of this. And what we know from that survey, which was released last year, is that we still have a housing emergency, defined as a vacancy rate of lower than 5%, but that housing emergency is not felt equally, right? The housing emergency is acute among the lowest income, lowest cost rental units, A, and B, among the lowest income New Yorkers, right? And so if we know that, and we treat that as the problem statement, then what does 421A have to become in order to meet that challenge? And to me, that is what reform discussions and renewal or next iteration, next generation 421A discussions have to focus on, is how do you meet the challenge that New York City has in this moment?
That is wonderful, and probably one of the most thoughtful responses that I've heard about 421A. And we've been doing a lot of work in Albany, and I know that you're in the city, but I hope some of your Albany colleagues pay attention, because that was really very thoughtful. So thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, civic engagement and community boards, right? So you have a fan in the Zoom, Sandra Erickson. Sandra serves as the vice chair for housing and land use. She's also a very active board member at the Bronx Chamber of Commerce. So Sandra says you can count on her support. She loves the work that you're doing. But it brings up the question of, how do we continue to build on the power of our community boards? And, you had referenced that District 14 has one of the youngest populations that are rising. How do we leverage the success of members like Sandra, but also invigorate the board with younger board members, so there can be, this institutionality that gets the full arc of the district?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Sandra. I appreciate you so much for the kind of work that you do in your day job, and how well you do it, but also how thoughtful you are and active you are on CV7. Yeah, I mean, I if you happen to follow me on social media, or you happen to be on my email list for the office, you know that I have been spamming the world about community board applications in the last few months, especially as our borough president brought the applications online and is offering them in Spanish. So I would say a couple of things, right? Recruiting right now is really important. Every high school I go to, because excuse me, you just have to be 16 in order to join a community board. So every time I go to a high school, I'm like, hey, there's this thing at our event at Focus. I was like, hey, there's a community board, right? And I think that's really it. So I don't know what the rates are for community boards that are outside of my own catchment area, but I have one of my community boards that is 50% vacant, just does not have, only has 25 out of the 50 members. And then of those 25 members, only 10 to 12 were showing up, such that we didn't even have quorum to do any business, to run any business in the fall, September, October, November. And so, I think like that's been really important. So I think the borough president extended the deadline to this week to March 31st. So please continue to encourage people to apply, especially our young people, our young professionals, like everybody who went to the happy hour, right? But at the same time, I know for my boards, if we don't, if we're not able to fill to capacity, which is 50 people per board, I'm going to continue to work with the borough president on a rolling basis to try to get folks in there, because it just, I'm selfish. All right, it just makes my job easier to have really good and active community boards. So I'm just trying to, no, I'm playing. But
But
it's
you're 100% right. Like active community boards really do help. You're one council member for a very large district of 170-ish thousand people. Having an actively engaged community board is really, really important.
right. They sound the alarms. They tell us to, where to look and how to focus, but also they're training grounds. They're training grounds for leadership in all sorts of places. I worked for the de Blasio administration prior to coming into office. And it was like, I walked into City Hall, into the bullpen where, the mayor staff sits, and it was like walking into Park Slope, Brooklyn, right? In many ways. And I walked into agency leadership meetings, and it was like walking into Brooklyn. And it's like, we need the Bronx represented, not just in the elected office, but in the leadership of every city agency that we have. And community boards are a really good training ground for that.
Absolutely. And I think that this is something that we really, really agree on organizationally and throughout government. Is using the community board as your stepping stone, and then getting yourselves baked into those levels of government is really where you can start making transformational change. Because yes, there are elected officials, yes, there's the mayor, but the crux of a lot of the work, and I've got to give a tip my hat to Sam on your team and Sharon on your team, but a lot of the crux of the work comes on the folks who are part of that integral agency, that integral council staff, that city hall staff. And those folks, they cut their teeth on the community board. They were actively engaged in organizing and things like that. And to really be smart and strategic about, baking those experts in at every level of government is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're getting close to time. So there's a couple other questions here, because I do want to give you like a little bit of a breathing space between this meeting and your next. So, there's a question about how the housing emergency, and it says, with the housing emergency and the armory being so big, is there a thought process to combine those two items and create housing at the armory?
Love where your head is at. Really, really love that idea. So unfortunately, because the Kingsbridge Armory is a national and local landmark, we cannot change the facade of the structure. We cannot build more windows. We can't, we have to stay true to the current form. It's an external landmark, so we can make changes inside, but we can't make changes outside. And so what that means is, because of the requirements for housing, you have to have 2 means of egress. You have to have certain height requirements for your units, ceiling heights. You have to have number of windows for spaces. It's not going to be adequate neither for housing or for schools. Right. So given that limitation of no housing, no schools, I think that's a big part of the reason why the neighborhood has landed on, okay, then give us jobs, economic development.
Great. And then I think this is a little bit further down the pike. I know that everyone's very excited about the Kingsbridge Armory, and that I think is a testament to the work that your office has done, Northwest Bronx and the EDC, to really get the community turnout. There was, I think the last community info session was like max capacity, which was great. So there's a question in here that says, I work for an organization that works with youth 16 to 24 years old that provide both education and employment resources for free in the South Bronx. Would the space, the Armory, include something for youth to access and learn about different resources in their community?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this kind of question, especially because it offers an opportunity to just share how this works, right? So I'm often approached, actually, somebody like at the last engagement, we had like 500 people there. Somebody came and they had like this whole folder with like renderings and graphics of like, look, we can put this in the Army. It's going to be great. You should let me do that. And that's the moment where I take advantage and I say, okay, so this is a public asset. That means that you own it, that the taxpayer owns it. And whenever the city of New York owns a property, there's no one individual who can decide what happens there and what doesn't happen there, right? There has to be a public process, and there has to be a competition. That's the really critical part here. So right now, we're collecting ideas just like this, right? And I've heard it a lot. Can we have spaces in there that serve youth 16 to 24? Can we make sure that we have, a velodrome? I don't know, like all kinds of ideas that we've heard. So all of these things, and I encourage you to put that idea, if you log into togetherforkingsbridge.com, there's a space where you can just submit ideas. I encourage you to do that, right? Put that idea, make sure that it's in the mix for consideration. So after this community vision process, that's phase one. Phase two is going to be EDC, the New York City Economic Development Corporation. They have to write up a report that captures all of the ideas and feedback and sentiments and hopes and dreams that folks have shared during the community engagement process and the visioning process, and they're going to write a report. That report is then going to feed into another document that EDC has to write, which is called a request for proposals, an RFP. That RFP is it's a solicitation. It's the competition, right? So the EDC puts out the request for proposal, says community best district in the New York City area has a beautiful armory, and the armory, the community around it wants youth and jobs. What's your ideas, right? And do you have the money to what is your financial strength to bring that idea into reality? And so once the EDC, again, the city agency, puts out the competition, then there's going to be all sorts of teams. I don't even know who they are. I'm kind of excited, but there's going to be all sorts of teams that come together and they compete. I have, this is a team that is going to propose a velodrome, a race track with community facilities. This other team is proposing to have the largest museum for hip hop artifacts, whatever, right? There's going to be all kinds of answers that we're going to get. And then the city agency is going to pick the winning proposals in comparison to how the proposal compares to what the community said they wanted to see. Okay. Then it's not even over. It's a very long process, right? So we're talking about maybe a year down the line, the city has selected the winner. Then that winner has to take that idea that they propose as a concept and they have to flesh it out and say, okay, here's the financing, here's the land use changes we need to see. Right now, the zoning for the Kingsbridge Armory is for a national eye center. I don't think that it's very likely that we're going to see a national eye center proposal win again there. So whoever wins the competition, they're going to have to bring the armory through the city's land use process, which is a whole thing. And the community board votes. See, community board votes, and the borough president votes, and I vote. It's a whole thing, right? And so once they go through that hurdle, and they have the financing and they work on all of that stuff, that's when they finally bring the team together, put the shovel to the ground and start construction, right? So all of that to say that, yes, sorry, I like to take these opportunities to just kind of spell that out for as many people as possible. And so all that to say that, yes, your idea is welcome and is, going to be considered, but it's really up to the teams that compete for the award of redeveloping the armory. They're the ones that have to, present the ideas of how everything is going to work.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important that folks understand the process, because I think so often, particularly because we're on the third marriage, people think that it can just happen overnight. But having the very clear upfront conversation of like, this is the start of a process is really important. And also like the next phase is really exciting to see what people will come up with and how it matches what the community wants. I mean, that's some exciting stuff. So to close, we always end this with this question. And it's, what are you most hopeful about for the Bronx?
Wow. Um, so much. I mean, I think what I'm most hopeful for the Bronx is tapping into the potential of our human resources, of our people, right? If we're able to invest correctly and make youth programs available in every school regardless of income of the parents, if we're able to expand apprenticeship programs and training programs, if we're able to redevelop the Kingsbridge Armory and really bring job opportunities there, then we're talking about a transformation for the people of the Bronx, not just the face of the Bronx, but the actual human resources. And I always, I think about my own story. I think about, I understand my own story as having won the lottery, right? My parents arrived to the Bronx, to New York, to the United States in the late 1970s, and to the Bronx in 1982, I believe. My mom moved on University Avenue in 183rd, and she lived in a bedroom with my older brother, and they were just in this tiny little bedroom, and then they worked and all of that, and they got their own apartment, and then they were harassed and suffered through all sorts of things, but just worked really hard and instilled in us the value of education. My dad was a street vendor. My dad sold mixtape. He shouldn't, he was a street vendor. He sold mixtapes. Maybe he should have been doing that, but that's okay.
We won't tell Columbia Records, I promise.
Don't tell Columbia Records or the radio station. How they used to record them on the radio, and so just like those humble roots that I had, coupled that with a family who said education, after school programs, enrichment programs, full scholarship to go to Harvard and Princeton, worked in the White House with President Obama, and here I am full circle as a representative for the community. That is a story that is extremely common if you are born into wealth, right? Yeah, cool. My dad's a lawyer. I'm going to be, the CEO of this, right? But it is the lottery if you grow up in a place like the Bronx, right? In a neighborhood like mine. And so let's change that reality, right? Let's make it so that, no matter what your zip code is or the income level of your parents, that there are opportunities for you to join an after school program, for you to go to college, for you to get, into an apprenticeship programs and be in a, become the shop steward of a union, right? And have really good wages, and that's really what I'm hopeful about. That's what keeps me going, is the idea that I probably won't change the entire world, but I can change in partnership with you all and in partnership with folks who care. We can change the realities and the possibility for the people of the Bronx.
Council member, I think your other council colleagues are going to be very jealous, because that was one of the most thoughtful responses to one of our concluding questions. So if Julie Manning gives you daggers, you'll know why. No. But thank you so much for giving your time today. Really, really appreciate it. It's a really great way to start a Wednesday. And I appreciate you carving out the time, and your entire team, because I know it's budget season and scheduling is hectic, but thank you for giving your time today. Really, really appreciate it, and appreciate your leadership and of course your friendship. And on behalf of the Bronx Chamber, we are here as allies and thought partners, and in whatever you do, please let us know. We are here to help and here to serve. So thank you for joining us again this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
You do the same. And for those who are still on the Zoom and on social media, this is being recorded and will be circulated. Additionally, there are quite a few events lined up from the Bronx Chamber of Commerce. One being our Women of Distinction event this Friday, March 31st at Villa Barone Manor. If you have not yet secured your tickets, please email foundation@bronxchamber.org. Additionally, on April 20th at the Bronx Museum of Arts, the Bronx Chamber of Commerce will be hosting an industry insights program on cannabis and its effect on the economy. Please see our website, www.bronxchamber.org/events, to register for these events. By and large, many of these events are free. If you are interested in becoming a member of the Bronx Chamber of Commerce and having exclusive access to the membership portal, please email membership@bronxchamber.org to learn about membership opportunities and the host of amenities that are offered to Bronx Chamber members. With that being said, thank you so much for joining us.